That gown is worth more than whatever clunker you drove here. If you even own a car and didn't take the bus." The words, sharp and venomous, sliced through the opulent air of Lux Madison. The store manager, Madison Cross, projected her voice for maximum effect, ensuring every shopper could hear. A crowd began to form, their smartphones emerging like weapons, ready to capture what they saw as cheap entertainment. "You don't belong in this world, sweetie," Madison continued, her voice dripping with condescension. "Take a look around. See our real customers. Notice a difference." Samantha Reed stood there absorbing each insult. Her faded jeans and worn-out sneakers were a stark contrast to the marble floors and crystal chandeliers. The laughter from the wealthy patrons was a cruel soundtrack to her public shaming. When she finally opened her mouth to speak, a sharp crack echoed through the store. Madison Cross had just slapped her, and in doing so, she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Because the woman she had just assaulted, the woman she was about to have security throw out like trash, was the secret billionaire owner of the entire retail empire. What happened next is a story of karma so perfect, it will leave you breathless. Have you ever faced discrimination? Type JUSTIC in the comments and tell us where you're watching from, because this is the most satisfying story you will ever hear. In a quiet corner of Lux Madison, Samantha Reed was inspecting a display of silk scarves. At 47, with a net worth of $4.2 billion, she was the unseen force behind 23 luxury retail stores spanning the American continent. Yet here she was, anonymous in her simple gray cardigan and old sneakers. This experience was painfully familiar. Growing up, she had watched store security trail her grandmother and had seen her mother refused service because of her skin color. Samantha had vowed that if she ever gained power, she would eradicate the prejudice that poisoned the world she knew. For months, anonymous complaints had been pouring in about Lux Madison's location 47, reports of hostile treatment towards minority customers and a toxic environment were too serious to ignore. This was meant to be a simple undercover check-in, something she'd done hundreds of times. But from the moment she walked in, she could feel a palpable ugliness lurking beneath the polished veneer of luxury. Madison Cross had managed this store for 8 years, ruling it like a petty tyrant. At 38, her blonde hair and immaculate suit were armor for a deep-seated insecurity born from a middle-class upbringing. She had clawed her way to the top, and her management philosophy was simply protect the store's image by excluding anyone who didn't look the part, anyone who reminded her of where she came from. She had built an army of loyalists. There was Jennifer Martinez, a single mother who desperately needed Madison's approval to afford her daughter's private school. Ryan Thompson, a 6-year veteran, genuinely believed Madison was a brilliant mentor protecting the brand's integrity. Ashley Parker, only 23, idolized Madison's ruthless professionalism. Dorothy Hamilton, a wealthy 71-year-old customer, acted as Madison's cheerleader, reinforcing her cruel behavior. And Luis Rodriguez, the security guard, trusted Madison's judgment implicitly. None of them knew they were about to play a part in humiliating the one person who could end their careers with a single phone call. The moment Madison saw Samantha, she labeled her a problem. Marching over with a smile that was all teeth, she said, "Excuse me, dear, I believe you've taken a wrong turn. The discount stores are a few blocks that way." Samantha remained poised. "I'm right where I'm supposed to be." This polite defiance only fueled Madison's fire. "Sweetie," she said, drawing out the word like a poisoned dart, "I don't think you grasp what kind of establishment this is. Our handbags start at $3,000. Dorothy Hamilton, the elderly regular, overheard and chuckled, giving Madison the encouragement she craved. Now performing for an audience, Madison's voice grew louder. What cater to an exclusive clientele? People with actual money. Samantha, undeterred, moved to a jewelry case. This was her merchandise in her store, and she wanted to inspect its presentation. Madison saw this as an escalation. "Oh, darling!" she boomed, her voice now carrying across the floor. That bracelet costs more than most people's annual salary. Perhaps the costume jewelry at a department store would be more your speed. The crowd was growing, their phones recording. Madison, feeding off the attention, turned to them. Some people just don't understand their place, do they? A man in an expensive suit laughed. She's got a point. Samantha then did something that sent Madison over the edge. She walked to the VIP section and asked to try on a $6 designer gown. Madison's eyes lit up. This was her moment. "Eviarum!" she bellowed. "This lady wants to try on our $6,000 designer gown." The store fell silent. All eyes were on Samantha, who stood with unshakable grace as she was gawked at like a zoo animal. "Should I tell her our fitting rooms require a credit check first?" Madison sneered, eliciting a new wave of murmurs and laughs. Ashley Parker, the young associate, giggled, "Miss Cross is so professional." Looking Samantha up and down, Madison delivered the devastating blow. "Honey, that single gown costs more than your car's entire Blue Book value. Assuming you have a car and didn't just hop off the city bus." Dorothy Hamilton joined in. "Really, dear, there are far more suitable stores for your budget." When Samantha calmly asked to speak with the manager, Madison spread her arms wide. "Congratulations, you're looking at her. And I'm telling you, you're in the wrong place." Madison wasn't done. She demanded to inspect Samantha's purse. "Store policy," she smirked. "When someone so clearly doesn't belong, we check for sticky fingers." Rummaging through Samantha's belongings, she pulled out a worn wallet held together with electrical tape. To Samantha, it was a symbol of her grounded roots. To Madison, it was a weapon. She held it up for the crowd. "Look at this! Taped together! This is what happens when you try to shop above your station." The crowd roared with laughter. Suggestions flew from every corner. "The thrift store is having a sale. Has she tried a garage sale? I hear the Salvation Army is lovely this time of year." These were not kids. They were wealthy, educated adults choosing cruelty over basic decency. And then the slap. When Samantha tried to speak, Madison's hand shot out, the crack of it silencing the entire store. For a second, everyone froze, stunned by the raw violence of the act. Madison, breathing heavily, smiled with pure contempt. "Now security will escort you out so our real customers can shop in peace." Lewis, the guard, stepped forward. The path of shame was cleared. But as Samantha was about to be physically thrown out of her own store, she held up a hand. She had been recording everything. Every insult, every laugh, every degrading moment on her phone. Calmly, she walked out the door, not in defeat, but in control. Outside, she dialed a number. Her voice was steady, devoid of emotion. "Marcus, this is Samantha. I need immediate legal and security at Lux Madison, location 47. Priority 1. Inside, Madison, seeing Samantha on the phone, shouted through the glass, "And don't come back." The crowd cheered her on. "Marcus," Samantha continued, "bring the ownership documents for this location. Bring the full legal team, and notify the entire board of directors. This is going to change everything." Madison, high on her victory, popped a bottle of Dom P.A. Rignan. "To maintaining our standards," she toasted as the crowd cheered. They were celebrating their cruelty, completely oblivious to the corporate storm about to descend upon them. 20 minutes later, 3 black SUVs rolled silently into the parking lot. Out stepped Rebecca Stone, head of HR, Michael Torres, head of legal, and a team of the corporation's most powerful executives. Madison saw them and assumed they were VIP clients. "Perfect timing," she greeted them. "I just handled a very difficult situation with absolute professionalism." Rebecca Stone's face was a mask of stone. "Miss Cross, we need to discuss your handling of a customer." "Of course," Madison said proudly. It was textbook. Our real customers were thrilled. At that moment, Samantha Reed stepped out from behind the corporate team. The store fell dead silent. "Yes," Madison said, annoyed. "This is the woman. As you can see, she's completely inappropriate for our clientele. Rebecca Stone's voice was ice. "Miss Cross, allow me to introduce Samantha Reed, the founder, CEO, and sole owner of the entire Lux Madison Corporation. She is your boss." The air was sucked out of the room. Madison's face went from confusion to disbelief to sheer, gut-wrenching horror. "That's impossible," she stammered. She dresses like what, Madison?" Samantha finally spoke, her voice quiet, but carrying the weight of an earthquake, like someone who doesn't deserve basic human decency. The realization crashed over the crowd. Dorothy Hamilton shrank back in terror. Jennifer Martinez began to sob, pleading for her job. The customers who had laughed and jeered now tried to slip away, but it was too late. Every face was remembered. "I didn't know," Madison whispered, her world crumbling. "You're right, you didn't," Samantha said. "And that's the problem. You made a judgment. The consequences were swift and brutal. Madison Cross employment terminated, banned from all company properties for life. Jennifer Martinez and Ashley Parker terminated for their active participation. Ryan Thompson demoted, assigned to mandatory anti-bias training. Dorothy Hamilton and several other customers permanently banned from all 623 Lux Madison stores." Samantha addressed the shell-shocked room. "You said I don't belong here. You're right. I don't belong in a place that treats people this way. But this is my store, and starting today, it will reflect my values." Her final words hung in the air. "Dignity isn't determined by your bank account, and respect isn't earned by the clothes you wear. Today, you all learned that the most dangerous assumption you can make is thinking you know someone's worth just by looking at them." Justice, on that day, didn't come from a courtroom. It came from the simple, powerful truth that you never, ever know who you're talking to